sitting in our dignified posture, feeling firmly planted. Sensing our body, the weight of our body, noticing the soft belly moving with the breath. Open chest, open to what is coming, what is here at this moment. Strong back, alert, relaxed. Soft belly, open chest, strong back. Noticing the in-breath, the out-breath. The pause before the next in-breath. Being here with each breath. Sitting, breathing in and breathing out. We notice thoughts as they come by with curiosity and kindness. And let them go. Body and the breath. Letting all those thoughts go for now. This is a time where we can let the mind rest. Feeling the peace with each out breath. welcome. Just two of us here, and perhaps some of you on your screens. This is our 8th week, and last week for this fall. Feels good to have done this with y'all. Last week we talked about mindfulness of pain and 4 different ways that we often deal with pain. Blocking, where we avoid the pain, we try to get away from it with various strategies, which very often work in the short term, sometimes not so well, and sometimes we just are drowning in the pain. It just overcomes us because our strategies aren't working that well. Maybe we're getting side effects from our strategies, drinking too much, taking medication, overworking. And so in meditation, we have a third approach, that is noticing it and letting it go. Not trying to get away from the pain, not denying it, but feeling it, sensing it, breathing with it, and building up that letting go muscle where we can say, okay, I have this pain right now, I can let it go and come back to the breath. And we talked about various ways, mindful ways we can deal with physical pain. Body scan, yoga, the breath. In the same way, this week, we're going to take a look at emotional pain. And perhaps even more important than physical pain, to learn to be mindful with emotional pain, which we all have. Loneliness, grief, anger, anxiety, depression. We all have these to a certain extent. So noticing them, coming back to the breath. And then there's this 4th radical alternative, what Tara Brach calls radical acceptance, in which we actually turn toward this area of hurt. Doesn't seem right that that should be a strategy for dealing with hurt, that we turn toward it. But blocking only works temporarily. Letting go works, but we find that if we turn toward our emotional pain, is actually an opportunity for us to grow, to mature, to be stronger, better people. Several weeks ago in our book, Real Happiness, we talked about this and the acronym RAIN, which we'll explore tonight. The four initials stand for R, recognize. That is, we know that we have this hurt and we recognize it. We name it. Anger, I can feel you. Yes. And the second step, A, accept. And that's where we make the decision. We're not going to block it. We're not going to avoid it. In fact, for this time, we're going to stay with it. Acceptance. And then the third step, I, investigation, is where the real work occurs. Where we notice really what this hurt feels like in the mind and in the body. And we look for deeper levels. We encounter the stories associated with the hurt. We breathe with it. We learn. We mature. And the fourth step, N, non-identification, we come to the point where we say, you know, we have this. It comes, but this does not define who we are. It's just a mental state. We can live with this. And perhaps, after we've dealt with it for a while, we may say, well, I have got more work to do on this, but for now I'm going to set it aside, come back to the breath, and rest in awareness. So, if you will with me, I'm going to lead us through a guided meditation. But before that, I'm going to share with you this poem. Perhaps you know it, but it bears hearing it again and again. The Guest House by Rumi, a Persian poet from like the 16th century, I think. The Guest House. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So, welcoming these painful, uncomfortable thoughts and feelings is an opportunity, is a blessing. We We can be grateful for our suffering. Hard to often notice that while it's happening, but as we go through it, we learn. Sitting and feeling our body and our breath. And bring to mind an uncomfortable experience, emotion that we've had recently or in the past, or are experiencing right now. What is this painful feeling? Give it a name. Ah, I recognize you. Yes. And accept this guest for right now, just for this short time. Okay, I recognize this uncomfortable feeling and I accept it. I can be with it for right now. Not avoiding it. In fact, turning toward it. Breathing with it. Saying the word again to ourselves, what is this feeling? What does it feel like? Most importantly, where do we feel this in the body? Every emotion has a place in the body where it rests. Perhaps in the belly, a tightness, a contraction, an emptiness. Perhaps in the chest, in the heart, a heaviness. Perhaps in the shoulders and the arms, a clenching, in the jaw. Just noticing, not judging, just noticing, where do we feel this difficult emotion? Where do we feel it in the body? And just staying with that sensation. Not imagining it, although perhaps for this exercise right now, if you're not suffering at the moment, you're imagining it, but when we feel this emotion, when we really notice it, we can actually feel this in the body. And staying with that. Breathing in and out. As we're investigating this suffering, feeling it in the body, perhaps we can note what else is associated with this feeling? What's behind it? Fear, perhaps, of losing something, someone, of the future. A feeling of insecurity. Anger is very often a defense mechanism that we employ to make us feel strong when in fact we feel vulnerable. Naming that feeling, what else is associated with it? Feeling it in the body, and just staying with it. We're the observer, calmly noticing what's going on in our mind and body. Maybe discovering something we didn't realize before about it. Sitting, feeling, breathing. And sometimes we may notice that it does become overwhelming. This is more than we can handle right now. That's a clue to say, well, we can come back to this later. For now, I'm going to let it go. Let that feeling go and just come back to the breath. Just come back to just sitting. And we realize this painful feeling is not permanent, is it? Feelings come and go. Even this, which feels so raw right now, will pass. This life will pass. We may ask ourselves, is this painful feeling personal? Am I the only one who experiences this? We realize this is part of being a human. We share this with all others. We're in this boat together. And non-identification. This does not define who we are. And so we've explored our pain, recognized it, accepted it, investigated it, nurtured it. Now we can let it go. Come back to just breathing. Letting the guest leave our house. He'll be back again. Good chance of it. We'll accept him then. And we notice perhaps that our mind has been swept clean in a way, ready to accept something new, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. How are we doing? Feel like sharing? I'll tell about something that I experienced these past months, is grief. I didn't like that feeling. I didn't really recognize it, what it was, but I noticed I was kind of avoiding thinking about my losses. That 5 o'clock cocktail just smoothed things out for me. And as I began to recognize and accept that grief, I could feel it like a rock, like a hard place here in my belly. And I was able to stay with it, breathe with it, and consciously just say, soft belly. Openness, just opening myself to the feeling, crying, weeping, letting it go, letting it be in me, breathing with it. I don't feel it so much anymore. It still comes, that guest comes back. And I kind of say, oh, thank you for coming back to visit again. I needed that. It's a lot easier now. I can breathe with it. Move on. I think naming it is really important for me. That part of meditation where we notice a thought or an emotion and we're able to put a finger on it. Oh, that's what that is. And it's helpful to build a vocabulary of thoughts, and in this case, a vocabulary of emotions. There's a psychologist who put together a nice little table. She calls it the emotion sensation wheel. What emotions feel like in the body? If you can't be with us here tonight and you don't have this, let me know and I'll send it to you. So this is kind of helpful because at the center of the wheel, the black hole, outside of that, she defines 6 primary emotions. And I'm sure we could put our own in there, but I think these are really good place to work with. So on the top, fear and anger. Definitely unpleasant emotions. In the bottom right, sadness and disgust. Disgust is an interesting one, but I'm glad she said that. And in the bottom left, some good emotions, what we would say pleasant, happiness and surprise. Now, of course, all of these have elements of pleasantness and unpleasantness associated with them. And then to the next level, she says, these are some things that might be associated or underlying that. So with fear, we might have a feeling of being scared, anxious, insecure, inferior, unwanted, embarrassed. We can look below the fear. And of course, we often notice that fear is what's underneath some of the other ones, like anger. And associated with anger, we can feel hurt, insecure, hateful, mad, aggressive, irritated, distant, critical. With disgust, a feeling of disapproval, disappointed, awful, aversion. This is often a reaction to another person. With sadness, we may feel guilty about being sad. We feel abandoned. Perhaps we're despairing, lonely, or apathetic, where we just don't care about anything. And with happiness, there's so many different levels of happiness, and it's kind of nice to define those. Joy, curiosity, being proud of ourselves, just being satisfied, courageous, peaceful, intimate, optimistic. I think those are very helpful. And I think surprise is an interesting emotion to explore. And she says that might be associated with a feeling of shock, confusion, awe, excitement. And then on the outer part of the wheel, she has some of the body sensations that we may typically experience when we're exploring this. When we say, where do I feel this in the body? And there's a lot of them, but with fear, for instance, we might feel tense, cold, jumpy. With anger, we might notice turning away, racing heart, clenching. With disgust, perhaps we might notice we're a little sick to our stomach. We have a lump in our throat. We're queasy. With sadness, we might notice that we have this feeling of emptiness in our body. Or we might notice our body actually curling up, a hollow feeling. With happiness, we might have a lot of energy. We might feel inflated. In fact, sometimes this can be so inflated, we can get reckless. Or with surprise, we have some typical reactions: jaw drop, sweaty palms. So I think it's helpful to have a vocabulary to describe what we're experiencing. Putting words on it, for me, helps define it. It's part of that acceptance. It's saying, putting a label on it, I know it's there.
I love this. This is great. It'd be a really great tool in a classroom with young kids.
Yeah. Very good. A few thoughts on some specific problems that we face. Depression has this feeling very often like we're trapped. We can't escape. If we can see these feelings, these thoughts, as mental events, passing things that happen in the mind, it may give us a little bit of space from the depression. If we can name the negative thought patterns and our habitual responses to this, like, let's say, those, like Sharon talks about, those tapes that we play. Oh, there I go again, I'm being my worst critic. There again, there's my mother's voice telling me that. There I go again. And that helps, gives us a little space from the depression, allows us to observe it rather than just wallow in it.
That has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
That particular tool. To just know when I'm wallowing.
Yeah.
And even if I can't make it stop, at least I know that I'm doing it.
Yeah, wallowing.
And I
Okay,
laugh
there I
while
go,
I'm
wallowing
crying.
again. Very good. And we know, it will pass. My friend the other day said there's 3 P's. Have you mentioned these? Is it permanent? Is it personal? I can't remember the 3rd P. I usually say, if I go to the grocery store, 3 things I can remember. Beyond that, I need a list, but I've forgotten the 3rd P. I can't remember it. Hasn't come back to me yet. Might have to ask him. With anxiety, that's a common one. So many people come to this class because of their anxiety. Worry. The breath is our great friend with anxiety. Just turning to the breath with no expectations, no saying, I'm going to get out of this anxiety. Just turning to the breath and noticing each in and out breath is in itself relaxing. With training, we learn to relax. We learn to accept. We learn to let go. Loneliness. Studies show that people who have qualities of wisdom, empathy, compassion, and self-reflection are much less likely to feel lonely. And so, a good tonic for loneliness is the loving kindness meditation. Expressing love for others takes us outside of that space where we feel alone. It brings us into community. Many of us have noticed how powerful that loving kindness meditation is. So that's a tool we can use. Difficult relationships. When we did that communication meditation, and we thought of somebody in our family who was difficult, there's some things that we can keep in mind when, you know, this probably goes with that feeling of disgust that was in the wheel. There's 3 habits we can try when we find that we are reacting negatively to another person. First, we can remind ourselves of what we in fact don't know. Do we really know why this person is this way? What's going on with them in their life? We can cultivate curiosity about the person. We can just pay attention to what's going on with them. And we can differentiate the individual from our group stereotypes. You know, very often we'll react against a person because, oh, they're just like that other person I don't like, or I don't like the way they look, and letting go of those stereotypes. Those are some ways in which we can help free ourselves from the suffering we endure when we're judging other people. So over the last 8 weeks, we've explored sitting meditation with the breath, our anchor. We've explored the body with the body scan, yoga, walking meditation, eating meditation. We've explored being mindful of our thoughts and feelings, naming them, noticing them, letting them go. We've explored mindful listening and speaking. We've talked about how do we deal with pain mindfully, physical pain and emotional pain. All these are tools in our toolbox we've been working on that we can come back to. And we know that if we keep practicing them, we do get better. We get better at it. Doesn't mean suffering comes to an end, but we can deal with it better over time. And we can be a force of goodness in our community, in our family. One more meditation that is helpful with emotional pain is cultivating joy. So, you know, we explore that pain, we go through it, but, you know, we don't need to just dwell in that pain all the time. It's very helpful to turn away from that and notice what feels good. Remember we talked, when we were doing loving kindness meditation, we talked about compassion, feeling others' suffering, sympathetic joy, feeling the joy in others, and equanimity, being steady with that, with ourselves and with others. So noticing our joy, noticing what feels good is a good practice. And it's another thing we can turn to when we're suffering. So let's try this together. Sitting and breathing. And bring to mind a pleasurable experience you've had recently. One that carries a positive emotion such as happiness, joy, comfort, or gratitude. Perhaps it's a particular place. Or perhaps an occasion or an event. Remember that. And cherish whatever image comes to mind with the recollection. What do you see in your mind's eye? Perhaps you can notice some sounds associated with it in your mind. Maybe kind of explore the time when this happened, what was happening. And notice where we feel this in our body. Where do we feel happiness, joy, comfort, or gratitude in our body? Breathing with that. Notice what other emotions come up, what other stories come up. Memories. Just exploring the sensation, the thoughts about this pleasurable feeling. Breathing with it. And letting it go, knowing we can return to this at any time. It's there when we need it. Cultivating joy. One thing I notice with that very often is this feeling of openness, of welcoming and extending the welcome, extending the joy outward.
me, bringing up a joyful memory made my eyes and my head feel less congested or tight. My head didn't feel so heavy to hold up.
So as we go forward from tonight, dedicate ourselves to continue our practice, to share what we can with others, to keep growing, keep learning. With all the ups and downs of life. Closing with a brief sit. Sitting, noticing our body. Noticing our in and out breath. Noticing sounds as they come and go. Noticing thoughts as they come and go. Noticing again the body. Noticing what is our mood right now? What defines how we're feeling? Sitting and breathing. Thanks for your practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg, for all you share.
And thank you for not sharing all the times you wanted to share. That's what you're thinking about me.
That is a talent too, to know when to speak and when not to. Some of us tend to speak too much. So I have 3 rules I defined for myself this past year. 3 guidelines, not rules, guidelines. Mindfulness, kindness, and restraint.
I like that.
That third one I forget a lot of the time. Barb, what was that third
you don't
one?
want that one.
No.
Mindfulness, kindness, and restraint. That's good.
So I'm going to offer this same class again in February. I'm going to do it just once a week on the Thursday evening at 6 p.m. not 5 p.m., at 6 p.m. at Chilton Public Library. We probably will record it again. And I'm working on a course for next fall, an exploration for myself and all of us about mindful aging. How, as our life goes on, we can learn about ourselves and in that same way be able to help other people as mentors, as examples. So look forward to that next fall.
Spring or fall. February will be a repeat of this.
That's right.
And then in the fall, it will be the
Mindful aging in the fall.
I hope to be here in February. Again.
I'd like to do together. Thank you, Michael. Have a good night. I got a tissue in there. If you don't mind that, I'll take a little. Thank you. Bye.